Hello, all, and welcome both to 2024 as well as the Movie Bears podcast. I'm Brad Harris, and each week on this show, we review films either current or classic, all with a lovable queer bear twist. And if you happen to be watching my wonderful co host Will on the live feed right now on YouTube, he's doing various wrestling poses for you, various muscly bodybuilder poses for you as a clue to the movie we're going to be reviewing on this episode. We're going to be discussing The Iron Claw, the tragic biopic all about the Von Erichs, wrestling's royalty, if you will, very popular in the 70s and 80s. Quite a tragic story there. I'm sure we're going to talk all about it in our movie review. But we've also got something additional for you, a gift, if you will, to start 2024 with. And that is our holiday catch-up. Not ketchup as in the red stuff you put on hot dogs and hamburgers, but catch up as in we're catching up with some films that we saw over the holidays that we wanted to chat a little bit about and put on your radar. They're in theaters or available for streaming right now, and you're able to check those things out. You can think of it like an extended plug session, I guess. But for us, it's more of a wrap session. Like, we just haven't gotten to get together and talk movies in a couple weeks because we were off for the holiday break last week. So very jazzed to be back with y'all. The wonderful William Lindis is with us in the virtual studio as well. Will, how the hell are you after the holiday crazy / awesomeness question mark?
Listen, Brad, if you think that I'm just going to come in here and you're going to wish me a happy new year, well, I'm going to see you at WrestleMania and I'm going to show you just how far I can kick your ass.
Or actually, the New Year's went pretty well. It was fun. Had a good time.
Do you need a Slim Jim?
Oh, yeah.
Sometimes I like a Slim Jim and sometimes I like a thick Jim.
I mean, I love any gym that we might be able to have.
Yes, me too. And speaking of Jim, Jim is currently having some technical difficulties, some issues with his microphone. Y'all probably don't need to see behind the curtain and figure out how the sausage is made, but he's in the process of rebooting. Hopefully he'll be joining us soon. Otherwise, this may be a bit of an abbreviated two-hander. I know Jim has a lot to say about the Iron Claw, and he's excited to share his pick for holiday catch-up. If he doesn't make it in, we'll still share that with you. He'll want to make sure you don't miss it. But all of that said, man, Will, I don't know about you, but over the last week between Christmas and New Year's, we got an opportunity to get some great downtime in. We rented a cabin up north with our friends Sam and Steven. We watched a bunch of movies. We saw a couple movies in theaters. But even having a week off, I still don't feel like I had time to see every movie I wanted to see that came out Christmas Day or thereabouts. How about you?
Well, exactly. We ended up scheduling a lot of movies. We did Christmas Eve, we saw a movie. Christmas Day, we saw a movie. Day after Christmas, we saw a movie. We just had a bunch that we wanted to see, and we lined them up one after the other. And even at the end of it, there's still a few things where it's like, I could still go catch this. I could still go see this. But I think that's always part of what happens around this time of year. You start to get the films that are getting the prestige push that are happening at the same time that the large format films that are trying to catch the I'm seeing Christmas Day movies with my family, that crowd showing up. So you get two big rushes at the exact same time, and it's hard to keep up with all of it. Plus, a lot of shit just hit streaming as well. And then trying to iron out the last little bit of my year-end list and going through like just things that I might have missed. It was a absolute marathon, but it's not a bad thing. It's an
Yeah.
excuse to see a lot of movies, right?
That's very true. That's very true. Well, obviously, we all had the chance to sit down and see the Iron Claw over the break. And so that's going to be our main review for this episode. And then for the catch up at the end, well, I think you've maybe got a movie or two that we didn't see. We might have a couple that you didn't see. Of course, we're not really going to spoil those things much because obviously we still want to see those other films. But we'll talk about them spoiler free, listener land. Just a heads up on that. So that if you're looking for some good things to watch while it's still in theaters or available on streaming right now, you'll have those choices available to you. But Will, friend, given your incredible Macho Man / Randy Savage / Hulk Hogan / Von Erich's wrestling introduction, would you mind setting us up for this film after we make the jump? You good?
Let's get ready to review.
Ding ding. I love it. I'll even put the mic up near my mouth so that you can see. Anyway, all right. So listen up, folks. We are going to bring you our review of The Iron Claw, the biopic all about the tragic story of the Von Erichs, wrestling's royalty, as they are often called. We're going to talk about the film spoiler free for probably about 10 minutes or so. And then we'll make that transition over to spoilers. Just like the bell in the ring, we will give you fair warning when it is time for the spoiler round. So we don't inadvertently TKO your innocence where the plot of this film is concerned. That's it with the wrestling references, maybe question mark, we'll see. But all of that said, here we go. Our discussion of The Iron Claw. All right. Well, thanks so much for setting this one up for us. Give us a little bit of just a brief synopsis. What is this film about? And tell us what it was like. Did you see this Christmas Day? How did you interface with it? And what did you think?
Yeah, absolutely. So, the Iron Claw. So this is the latest movie from A24, directed and written by Sean Durkin. He's the dude that gave us things like I always have to look it up because I always mix up the names. Martha, Marcy, May, Marlene, amazing Sarah Paulson movie, and from the Jude Law film from 2020, The Nest. I'm really good at these like dramatic films, which is exactly what we get here with The Iron Claw. Only this one is drawing on a sort of like a abbreviated version of a true life story about the Von Erich brothers, a group of Texas-based pro wrestlers, all of who were brothers who were brought into the sport by their father, who was himself a pretty well-known wrestler. And they made a huge splash through the early 80s. That splash included lots of title fights and climbing of the ranks and climbing of the popularity meter, but at the same time, there's also a lot of tragedy and trauma that came along with that story. So the Iron Claw really follows that particular story. So you asked about my experience seeing this, and a couple of different things sort of to flag there. First of all, this one I saw back on the 23rd, so it was like, like right before Christmas. We saw it in a pretty packed house, which was nice. And this one was one I knew I wanted to go see because I grew up on pro wrestling, and I grew up on pro wrestling in the state of Texas. So we know who the Von Erichs are here. One of my favorite wrestlers in the kind of mid-late 80s. And I showed you guys before, but I've got this book that I got in 1991. And there you go.
Hey, well, sorry, back that up a second.
Yeah.
I was trying to focus the screen on you and it muted you instead. I wanted everyone to be able to see your thing. So if you could just back it up to when you lift it up and talk about it, we'll give Jim an editing note. Thank you.
Yeah, Absolutely. So I got this book back in like 1991. I'm like a little kid at this point, because I was super into pro wrestling. So it's Championship Wrestling, Masters of Mayhem, and I was flipping through this book in preparation for the show because, again, the Von Erichs are a part of this story, and sure enough, here is a picture of Kerry Von Erich, the Texas Tornado,
Oh,
pumping iron.
wow. Look at
Yeah,
that. Huh.
dude was ripped. So all that to say, I came into this knowing some things about the family, and I will say that if you are one of those people who thinks that a biopic has to be 100% perfectly accurate to every single detail the way it actually happened, there are going to be some things that'll disappoint you here. This is a story that was heavily edited and modified to make the fictional or the, I guess, the gripping account that we saw on screen. That said, I think it's an amazing film, and I really enjoyed it. One of my favorites overall of the year. I'm able to look past the things that they changed. They cut an entire brother out of the story. There were 5 Von Erichs, and just one of them just didn't make the story, and that's a little disappointing. But what they did was they made a very focused story that had a very intense point of view that we were able to follow all the way through here. This isn't one of those, again, those biopics that just reads like a Wikipedia article. This one was really trying to figure out, well, what does it really mean to be a wrestler, to be a part of the family, and to have these expectations set upon you? And I love that. I want more biopics that sort of do this sort of thing. If I want the actual factual of every single thing on there, I'll watch a documentary. But for my money, this really delivered. Zac Efron is incredible in the lead role of Kevin Von Erich. Jeremy Allen White plays Kerry Von Erich, whose picture I just held up. The entire cast, all the brothers have so much chemistry. All the wrestlers feel so true to life. There's even some cameos from people who are playing other notable pro wrestlers that show up through this movie. And even if they don't look 100% perfect, they capture the mannerisms and the style so well that you're like, yeah, this is that person. I really enjoyed this. This is a tearjerker. You will cry, especially if, the weight of expectation and the bonds of family are something that you've dealt with in your life, which is most of us. This is just a good movie. Just a good story told well. Can't recommend it highly enough.
All right. Excellent. Will, thank you so much for that setup of the film and also your recommendation of it. I know a lot of folks in our age group grew up with wrestling. And so, these names may already be familiar. Like you said, some of the other folks who show up in the movie, we may know them. And then we have folks who are beyond our age range who are, adults back then and maybe had even more interest and knowledge compared to us kiddos at that time. The wonderful, the utterly delectable, actually, Jim Pliafico has joined us, hopefully on the other side of some tech issues we were having with his mic. Hey, sweetheart, how you doing? You sound great just from your sigh and your
Yeah, I'm doing good. Sorry, I'm late arriving. As you said, had a bit of tech issues we won't go into, but they seem to be, at least for now, ironed out. Obviously, hopefully they'll stay that way for the rest of the show. But I gather that you guys are talking about a movie, right? You're talking about the Iron Claw.
Wait, we're talking about a movie called The Iron Claw on the episode titled The Iron Claw and Holiday Catch-Up?
Yes.
Indeed, we are. And you've entered at absolutely the perfect time, babe. Will just got done telling us how much he liked the film. And I'm a little curious because, like always, when we see movies together, we kind of withhold from each other a lot, which is really hard this time being in a cabin with you for a full holiday week after we saw the film. But tell us a little bit about what you thought of The Iron Claw. Is this recommend while it's in theaters, maybe catch on streaming, or skip entirely? Where do you come down?
Yeah, I mean, we were. You may have talked about this, but we were basically holed up in a cabin in the northern part of Arizona, in a kind of a resorty, woodsy, you know, kind of town up in the mountains. And there are movie theaters. There are a couple of movie theaters up there, but the choices for movies weren't, aren't as great as somebody who lives in, well, even a metropolitan, a semi-metropolitan area like Tucson or whatever. So I was kind of happy to see the Iron Claw was playing there because I had wanted to see it, but I didn't expect it to pop up there where we were. So I'm like, yes, let's go see it. It was the first one we saw in the 2 or 3 movies that we did get out to see while we were up there. And this one did not disappoint. I really, really enjoyed this film. Where I'm coming from on this movie is I was a wrestling fan mostly in the 70s, you could probably say, mid 70s. So I was about, half a decade to a decade behind, ahead of kind of the emergence of the Von Erichs as they came upon the wrestling scene. And, I was way into it, like as a young teen adolescent. Me and my friends would watch them, and we'd emulate the characters and wrestle each other, and if we'd watch it on UHF channels on Saturdays and or Saturday afternoons, and it was a hoot. Unfortunately, my interest in pro wrestling kind of tailed off probably around the same time as the Von Erichs emerged. I was aware, of course, of I had heard of the Von Erichs. The Hearts were another kind of brother combination that wrestled, and then all the other wrestlers that came like a little bit after these guys. Of course, they were very famous, like when the Hulk Hogan explosion happened in wrestling. This was kind of before that, if I'm remembering it correctly. But it was still great to see the inner workings of wrestling of this movie. This is as you said, Will, this is a kind of a harrowing tale about and tragic tale about a family growing up in wrestling. This movie depicts 4 brothers, and we'll talk about whether there is another brother. Apparently, there is actually 6 brothers, and they do talk about a 5th one, but not the 5th one that
not the 5th one that's part of the
not the 5th one that wrestled, I guess. Which is weird, and maybe we'll talk about that later. But you know what? I don't. It is odd that it's missing, I guess. Like, you scratch your head and go, why? And I think there's a reason for that, and we'll talk about that in spoilers. The director has given a reason why, the writer and director. But what we got was great. I was shocked at a lot of things in this movie. I was shocked at Zac Efron's appearance, his physical performance, and the physical performance for all of these actors who portrayed the wrestlers. Right, we had the guy, the actor who's been talked about a lot this year, Jeremy Allen White, as one of the wrestlers, as Kerry Von Erich. Right, if anybody's seen that TV series The Bear, he's the dude. He's Kerry Von Erich in this movie. So just the performances, I think, alone were great. The way the story is told, the director is Sean Durkin. He's done another movie that we loved, if you remember right, way, way, way long ago. Martha, Marcy, May, Marlene, if you remember that one.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah.
And also another one called The Nest, which was probably a little bit less well known, but I did watch it. So this movie seems kind of a departure for him. Those first 2 movies were more like psychological thriller, small psychological thrillers. This is more of like a biographical. Let's call it a biographical thriller about this family. And Will, you probably, growing up in Texas, right? You grew up in Texas or Oklahoma?
Grew up in Texas.
North Texas, I guess. I don't know if if you have a book with the Von Erichs in it, you probably had much more exposure to what was going on with the Von Erichs being from Texas and Texas tornadoes and all that stuff. But
Yeah.
man, this movie's great. I could go on and talk about it forever. I'm just stop here because we'll talk about it more. But this is definitely worth seeing. I'd like to say it would be like a crowd pleaser, but that's not what it is. It's totally the opposite it's a great movie, but not really a crowd pleaser, right? Like if this was a crowd pleasing wrestling movie, it would be like, everybody celebrates, they win the championship at the end, blah, 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 blah. And I'm not going to spoil what happens in this movie, but it's really not. I wouldn't put it in the category of crowd pleaser, although it will move you. It will make you feel something. And to me, that's a test of a great movie. And this one does it. So see it in movie theaters. I think it's one of those movies that's, it's not a superhero movie. It's not a monster movie. It's just a really well acted, well written, well presented film. So see it, worth seeing.
All right. Well, thank you so much for your thoughts and your recommendation as well, Jim. That's 2 recommends so far, and I guess it falls to me to
spoil the
either
party,
add another one or bring the party down. Listen, I'm just gonna say this: the marketing for this movie really billed this as like a fun wrestling movie. At least the trailer that I saw and the TV spots that I saw. Not long before we saw the film. And so when I sat down to this movie, I very much expected like the sports success biopic story thing. And Jim, you're absolutely right. Again, we'll talk more in spoilers, but for the reasons that you mentioned, I think that's why this movie grabbed me a lot more than I think it probably would have otherwise. So I really appreciated the drama and the story behind this family, their struggles, some of the tragedies that befall them. I enjoyed some of the wrestling segments, but I'll be honest, I'm not super into wrestling. So like that wasn't the draw for me. It was the character story. And I think it did that very well. That said, though, I think the wrestling sequences themselves were filmed well, choreographed well. They were kind of fun to watch. I think for me, I had more fun looking at the bodies of the people than how they, attempted to fakely hurt each other or not, ? Jim, you mentioned Zac Efron's body transformation. Holy shit, is he gearing up to play He-Man in a movie? Because with that haircut that he had in the film and those big muscles and how cut he was,
we'll just call it the Prince Adam.
He fucking looked like He-Man to me. Yeah, he had the Prince Adam haircut, but like it was more of that like dirty orangey blonde that it becomes when Adam changes into He-Man. I'm really curious how long it took Zac Efron to bulk up like that and make that shift. Not that he had a bad body before this movie. I mean, he had some muscle and he was cut already, but I mean, he really, really like did the opposite of a Christian Bale into a thin body. He became, even more muscular than he already was. It's crazy. But listen, as much as I did like Zac Efron in this movie, Jeremy Allen White, I think was also really good. I haven't seen The Bear, so this was my first exposure to him. But I think he did really well. The other brothers were kind of forgettable to me a little bit. But I do want to talk about Lily fucking James, who I think was fantastic in this movie. We saw her several years ago in the Disney Cinderella remake, which I think was that like our second year of South by Southwest or something. It was a while ago.
We watched that together here actually at the Alamo Draft House on Slaughter Lane as we left our house before going over to pick up our badges. I remember that very, very intensely.
Yeah. All the MBP memories coming out of the woodwork. But for me, I think Lily James was easily the best part of this entire movie. I think she is able to do so much with her facial expressions and just the timbre and tonality of her voice. I was very impressed. I didn't really like Cinderella that much. Thinking back, casting my thoughts through the years, she was fine in it. But I really appreciated her performance here. So I want to preserve time to get into all the spoilers, but Lily James, on the off chance that you're watching this, you're probably not, but if you are, great fucking job. Really, 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 really good stuff.
Brings up a question, like, is it harder, like, as a female actor, to shine through all the the sausage party that this movie was? Like, is it harder for her to shine through, or is it easier for her for a good performance to be recognized? But I agree with you, Brad. I think she was great here. I, for one, remember liking the Cinderella movie. Like, it kind of surprised me how much I liked it, because I thought, oh my God, here we go. This thing's going to be terrible. And by the way, it was 2015.
Oh, there we
That
go.
opened.
Okay.
Yeah. And yeah, I almost didn't recognize her in this film. I didn't look at the credits beforehand to see who was playing Pam, I guess, Pam Von Erich, but Kevin's wife, right? I think.
Right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, she was great. She, credit to her for bringing so much to this part that she was able to kind of, stay up there and be noticed amongst, the Zac Efrons and the Jeremy, Alan Whites and so forth. But really great. Yeah.
All right. Awesome.
I'd recommend, if anyone here has Peacock, specifically like the paid version of that app where you get, some of the additional shows on there. One of the things that's a kind of a sub channel that lives on Peacock is the WWE like sub channel, right? And so after watching this movie, you can go back and watch a couple of different things to see the matches. Like, I remember when I was a kid, so 1990, I got the pay-per-view for SummerSlam, and that's the one where one of the matches, title match that happens in this between Carrie and Mr. Perfect happens sort of on the background on the screen. I remember watching that on pay-per-view when I was 8 years old. So I rewatched it right after the movie, and it was really fun to see. And Brad, I'd also really encourage looking at kind of like, they have some of the old WCW wrestling from like the early 80s. There were a lot of people in that wrestling era who were just, they were just kind of bubbas. And going back and watching, it was like, oh, I suddenly get why I was super into this. Because even as
this
a kid,
might be one of the reasons I'm gay. I don't know.
Because I remember as a kid, because I would have been 4 when Starrcade 86 came out or whatever, right? But I remember as soon as I, was old enough to like start renting tapes and stuff like that, I would rent the older ones. So like, I really liked that 82 to 86 era, which I wasn't old enough to watch when it was happening, but that was when I really liked watching the rest of it. So I went back and watched a 3-hour pay-per-view over the weekend just because.
Oh wow.
And yeah, it was fun to watch, see some of the old wrestlers, and then also like, oh yeah, okay, all right. There were a lot of dudes that fit my aesthetic, just sort of greased up and going at it, and
wearing tight tights and
reawoken some things in me. So I'd recommend it.
Well, there you go. Maybe I'll have to use my Peacock subscription to
Peacock.
Get my Peacock out and watch some wrestling.
Whip it out.
All right. Well, listen, we have several other movies that we want to talk about and bring to you. So we're having a little bit more of an abbreviated discussion than normal. So we're going to preserve some time for our spoiler section. We're going to go ahead and make that transition so that we can unpack the Iron Claw without worrying about tripping over a spoiler, in the middle of the room. If you have not yet seen the Iron Claw, A, totally okay. A lot of movies coming out this time of year. But B, this was a huge recommend for all 3 of us. So make sure to get out to see that in theaters if you can. Otherwise, catch it on streaming. We hope you enjoy. But Jim, Will, spoilers are officially fair game. Where do y'all want to start?
Well, I mean, so this movie, we talked a little bit about the wrestling stuff. This movie doesn't, its main focus is not necessarily the wrestling stuff, the matches, the 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 individual matches, how they got to where they were. It was more like the behind the scenes. It certainly was about this family, and the relationships between the brothers, and the father. And that's what it's all about. So if people are going in looking for, I want to see all this wrestling stuff, they will see some of that, but that's not where the movie focused. And you'll be surprised how much, even though you don't get that you expected, you'll be wowed, I think, by what was really happening with these wrestlers. And God, was it tragic? I mean, like, of the 5 brothers that we saw in the movie, even though there were 6 brothers, 4 of them like died early, right?
Right.
Two by suicide, one by intestinal puncture or something like that, like a sepsis situation abroad. And the young kid, we don't even know how he died. It's not even really talked about in the
Not
movie.
in the movie. It's
right.
His real life death. I won't go into the details because it's a kid dying a tragic death, but it's tragic. If you read up on it, it will make your stomach turn. So
yeah, and
yeah,
and then the 6th brother, which this movie doesn't even mention as existing. They basically cut that brother out of existence, and I don't know the name of that brother. I think it was Chris, right?
Yeah.
Also committed suicide, I believe. So just like awful, tragic, like dark cloud over this family. The movie tends to show that a lot of the stress in the family may be coming from the overzealous father driving his children ruthlessly driving his children in certain directions. And it's just the whole movie, you're like looking at this guy and you're like, when are you going to wake up that you're just like destroying your kids and your legacy? And it's just awful. Yeah, it's just like heartbreak after heartbreak after heartbreak after heartbreak in this movie. And that is the reason I read from the director why the other brother was not in it. It was just too much. It got to be like, we've already got like 4 tragedies in a row in this movie. The 5th one was just this.
What does another add?
Yeah, exactly. Right. Yeah.
Because the Chris's death came from, I mean, in real life, he was just kind of pushed into sort of being a wrestler as well, but he like just didn't have the frame, and he was not, and he succumbed to that. And there's things that this movie factually gets wrong, right? And I think it's important to flag those. Like I said up front, they don't hurt my enjoyment of this movie because I think overall what we got was a sharpened version of the narrative. But I just want people to not walk away from any biopic or narrative and think like this was the gospel, like that's it's there to tell a story, right? So there's that. The father himself was maybe not as harsh on the family as maybe it came across in the movie. Kevin kind of shouldered some of that burden as well in real life, but he's also the living family member. It's generally the living family member, you get he gets to tell the story kind of. Yeah. And they cut out Carrie Von Erich also had children and a wife that we don't really get to see here, which makes his story actually more tragic. So the Von Erichs have they kind of a 3rd generation of wrestling family. Both of Kevin Von Erich's sons, which we do see in the movie, went on to become pretty successful pro wrestlers, but probably the most successful pro wrestler of that batch was Lacey, who is Carrie Von Erich's daughter, who she went on to become like a kind of a female championship wrestler for Total Knockouts, the TNA. So TNA. Wow. Yeah, it was named that way for a reason. But she's a very notable athlete there. All that to say, when you're picking a story, you need to pick what your narrative is going to be, and you need to sharpen it. And in this case, we got to see a story about legacy, and we got to see about the consequences of being pulled into the orbit of legacy or trying to escape the orbit of legacy. And that story, I think, is sharper and more poignant for some of the edits. But again, if you're a purist, just kind of keep reading up on some of the other things, because there's a lot of additional wealth to dig into there.
Most definitely. We had an interesting experience seeing this movie up in Pine Top. It's a small movie theater. I don't know, Jim, were there like maybe 50 seats in that auditorium?
It's pretty
Maybe.
small. One of the old. I mean, hey, look, it was probably one of the first, one of that first wave of movie theaters that actually had stadium seating. You know what I mean?
Right. Right. Yeah.
So it wasn't old, but it was getting there.
Yeah, for sure. But interestingly enough, there was a couple that came to see this movie that brought their 2 young children to see the film,
Oh
which
boy.
I don't really understand. And at one point,
Like
you
4
know,
years.
the true to life aspects of this film, of course, had to involve watching one of the Von Erichs brothers masturbating in the shower. And I just hear the little girl say, "Mommy, what's he doing?"
Yeah.
And I'm like,
Yeah.
hmm.
Like the first scene is the very first scene is one of the brothers walking out into the kitchen in his underwear, tidy
Yep.
whities, walking around. And is that any worse than seeing a wrestler in wrestling tights? And maybe not.
I don't think
I
so.
don't know. It's
Yeah.
It's
But
But
masturbating in the shower is
masturbating in the
that
shower
is
is
that is a different element. Yeah.
although it wasn't exactly full frontal. It was. I mean, adults got the message. Children, maybe not. Maybe he's just he's just scrubbing himself.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
Mommy, what's that man doing?
he's just
Excuse
scrubbing.
me, he's not talking in the middle of a movie.
Oh, well, that was a whole nother thing. Like, I'm wondering why do people anyway, that's a whole nother topic, not related to this movie. But yes, it was kind of strange to when that, I'm like, did they like step into the wrong auditorium? Maybe they're here to see Migration instead.
It's very likely. Like, I mean, if they are a family that grew up watching wrestling, which there's a lot of them, a lot of people who are in that, they likely have kids who are watching wrestling today. There are a lot of kids of that age who start watching, wrestling here in 2023, 2024, right? So, Brad, to your point, when you saw the trailer and you said like, oh, this is maybe going to be more of like a fun sports underdoggy type thing. There's a world where this couple saw the same thing and thought, oh, my kid likes wrestling. I like wrestling. It's a wrestling movie.
Let's go see the Von Erichs win some matches.
Sure. But like when the Von Erich brothers start fucking killing themselves while their 4-year-old children are watching, you'd think maybe they would like take the children and leave at that point. Like that's some pretty heavy stuff for kids.
I do agree that it's, like just, you don't have, once you've like sat down for a film, that doesn't mean that you have to like commit to the entirety of it when you have your kids there with you.
Yeah.
Well, I don't want to suppose that these people think this way, but right. They've already, at that point, they were already way past the masturbation scene, right? So that in their minds, in a lot of people's minds, sex is like 100 times worse than violence, right? Or suicide or anything like that, or self-harm. So, hey, they're already past the hard part. The rest of it's easy, right? It's just people killing themselves. Will, I want to pick up on something you said, which I didn't know. I didn't do any research on the Von Erichs yet. I'm probably going to see this movie again because I think our roommate Kevin really wants to see it. He's a sports fan in general and a younger sports fan. So I would love to see this movie again with him. But this movie portrays Kevin Von Erich, which is the character played by Zac Efron, kind of in a sympathetic way, right? The movie portrays him as like having his head on kind of straight, recognizing the tragedy that's going on around him, maybe being a lot powerless to kind of do anything about it. But you seem to indicate that maybe that wasn't like fully true. Maybe he was more complicit in some of the stuff that's
Maybe
going on.
complicit. I think it's more that I think that this film took all of the positive things that happened and shifted them over to Kevin so that all that was left was the negative on Fritz. For example, there's one scene where they're signing over the rights to uh, was it Midwest Wrestling? They're signing over the rights of that over to the Jarretts for and and it's portrayed in the film like Fritz saying, "Nope, this is in our family and it's going to stay, and we're going
Over
down with
my
the
dead
ship."
body, probably.
And it
Yeah.
was he actually was the one that kind of brokered the deal in real life, and Kevin was the one that more opposed it. But that makes a weird, like if you have it that way, that kind of feels weird with the story that's being told. So they swapped those two things out.
Right.
That doesn't make either of them good or bad inherently, but it did shift like narratively something over that made the one feel more positive. If that makes sense.
Okay.
But I say all this as someone who, like, you know, I look at the Von Erichs, all of them with a lot of like warmth and positivity and sympathy for what, you know, what they've endured. I mean, they were inducted into the as a family into the Wrestling Hall of Fame, and it's because they were respected then and they're respected now, and that doesn't happen. That doesn't happen with everyone. There's a lot of people have wrestled through the years. A lot of people have been in that sport, but the ones that are like the good personalities, the good in front of and behind the rings are the ones that become legacies, and that is what happened here.
I did not expect. There's a scene or toward the end that the crying scene, I guess we could call it, that I just didn't expect. I guess in this movie, it kind of came. It kind of hit me harder because I wasn't expecting it. I think it's kind of the reunion scene, I guess we could call it, where the brothers are reunited. In
heaven,
in the afterlife or wherever. But yeah, I thought that was really well done. Usually that can be really maudlin. You know, it can kind of work against the movie. But I think in this case it really worked well because, you know, these brothers, at least the movie portrayed these brothers had a real love for each other, right? And they tried to watch out for each other, right? You know, the ones who were quote unquote the weakest or the least capable wrestlers or whatever, or least willing, is that the right word, or whatever, like the musician brother, for instance. I forget, was it
Mike?
Yeah.
You know, they kind of watched out for Mike, and that was really cool. I just like the way the story was put together, and even though I know in the back of my mind, like there's some they did some things with the facts, I guess, in this movie, maybe bent some things. I think it worked well in the film as a story.
Yeah.
I was just agreeing. Yeah.
All right. Cool. I didn't want to cut you off, Will. Sometimes we start to talk at the same time. It's like, anyway. But yeah, definitely a good movie, even if it does play a little fast and loose with some of the factual things. I don't know. I think the movie says a lot about maybe even carrying on a legacy that you don't want to be your own, and how that can be, you know, just as destructive as also getting what you think you want, like winning a wrestling championship and then, still being depressed and having trouble and, things still ending up tragic for you, even though you've had success. So, a good film. Definitely get out there and see it. If you've listened to spoilers, I think, you could still get some good stuff out of it, even if you have been spoiled on some of the more major plot points. And because a lot of this is history anyway, you may know a lot of this already. But I'll say I was a complete noob because I didn't watch a lot of wrestling growing up. I didn't really know about the Von Erichs. So for me, I'm like, I'm learning all the things. And then after the movie, Jim's like, oh, yeah, there's a brother they didn't even mention. And, oh, yeah, well, this actually happened and not that. But Jim, the last thing I want to talk about just real quick, I know we got other movies to get to, but you mentioned that reunion scene. And speaking of the brothers, I actually expected while they were all like hugging and stuff for them to like suddenly look over and up walks Kevin without explaining
Yeah.
like how he died or when he died or
Mm.
because I didn't know the history. I didn't know that Kevin
Yeah.
was still alive, and and so I was kind of like, well, geez, this movie's pulling its punches, no pun intended. But then it was like, oh no, wait, this is like a real life story thing. The guy's probably still alive, whatever. But that was a very cool sequence.
Yeah.
I think what was even, more special about that was just, yeah, it's a sausage party, but like they're brothers, and like you could feel that like bond and love between them. It very much came off as believable. And I think that's a real strength of this movie and that scene.
Right.
And the way that scene was shot too is if you're not a religious person, and so you can look at this one of two ways. Either this is what happened when they all went to the afterlife and did that, and that's a very valid reading because that's what we saw on screen. But the way that it was edited, we see that scene happen, and then it kind of it quickly cuts back over to Kevin sitting over Carrie's body. And he's sort of like holding his hand and thing. And so you can also say, well, this is him hoping that his brothers are being reunited in the afterlife.
Yeah,
and so
right.
you can look at it in both ways, and they're both very valid reads. And both of them are like emotional, like drop kicks from the top rope, like in terms of how they hit. So
Absolutely.
yeah, man, this is such a good movie.
I wish they had given, and again, in real life, I don't know, and I might never know, the mother, Doris Von Erich, or Doris was it Pattinson or Patterson, or the real
Atkinson?
name?
Atkinson.
Atkinson. Yeah. Obviously, she was. From the characterization, I could tell she was a devout Christian. Full faith in the Lord, her Lord, or whatever, and also a complete. In complete subservience to whatever the dad says, right? In service, like of the boys, of the kids. I wish I don't know if you just wanted to kind of grab both of these parents and say, can't you see like what's happening to your family here, right? It's you could see it coming a mile away. When the first tragedy starts, I'm surprised that she didn't have a scene, or at least I don't remember her having a scene of real doubt of like her beliefs. I would have liked to have seen that. But maybe it never happened, but since this movie dabbled in stuff that really didn't happen, maybe we could have seen a scene like that. Maybe that would have been, I think, really powerful. This movie is about toxic masculinity, right? From partly, at least, mostly from the dad, sometimes from the brothers. Not necessarily how it has an effect on women and females, which is usually how we think of toxic masculinity. But this is toxic masculinity that worked against their own well-being and interest. So I think that's a powerful message in the movie as well.
Absolutely agree, Jim. Fantastic points. All right. Well, we got more movies to talk about. I'm sure there's a lot more we could say about the Iron Claw, but we're gonna tap out.
Tapping out
of this discussion and move on into our holiday catch up, where catch up. All right, listen, let me explain. In Michigan, where I'm from, we say catch up instead of catch up. It like our A is like an E, so it's like weird. So I'm trying to remember to say catch up instead of catch
very close.
up.
It's very close.
Okay. But whatever. We're gonna do a thing here. We're gonna put some movies that we had a chance to catch up with over the holiday week on your radar, things that we got to see. You might have seen them too, and if so, great. Throw your thoughts in the live chat or the comments. Let us know what you liked about those films, or there may be ones that you didn't get to see yet. Maybe you will at some point. But all of these movies we're going to mention, we have personally vetted as being amazing and awesome and fun, or impactful in some emotional way. These should be pretty solid choices for you to check out in theaters. Before we do that, though, we have a couple of comments in the live chat.
Hey.
Kev, speaking of people named Kevin, Kev.
Aw,
I don't know if Kev is
Kev.
short for Kevin here, but he says the sexiness is real right here,
Aw,
right now. What a great
Watching the
way.
world wake up from history.
thanks, Kev.
What a great way to start 2024 with such a great compliment from a very handsome listener himself. So thanks so much, Kev. We
Nice.
appreciate you. And Tom is with us as well.
Hey,
Tom
Tom.
is no stranger to this show. He's commented on many different episodes. Tom says, Happy New Year's, guys. I'm getting closer with my movie catch up, Saltburn and The Leftovers. I wonder if any of those films are going to come up
As opposed to
in
the
this
holdovers,
discussion.
right? I guess.
I think he might have meant the holdovers,
Maybe.
possibly.
There is something called the leftovers, though.
Yeah,
but
I don't know if
that's
it's
a
it's
is
a
that
show.
the Lindelof show on HBO or whatever it was?
Yes.
Maybe.
I think
Yeah.
so, yeah.
So I'm pretty sure he meant the
Lost
holdovers.
too. Lost. Too.
Yeah. But some good choices there, Tom. We'll see if any of those come up in our discussion. Yeah, Tom says exactly. There you go. But let's get this rocking and rolling. Jim, why don't you kick us off if you don't mind? The assignment was to bring one movie you saw over the holiday week to this part of the show. Let's see if you did your assignment correctly. What movie did you choose and why?
Well, I chose a movie that I did enjoy quite a bit. Saw it over the holiday, although I might have seen it just around the time we did our last show, but I don't think we mentioned it. It's a movie called Saltburn. It's you may have seen a lot of talk about this movie, like if you follow stuff on the X platform or other social media outlets. A lot of people are seeing this movie, and I still have not seen Poor Things. But for my money, so far this year, for 2023, Saltburn is the horniest movie of the year, like so far for me. Like devilishly, deliciously horny and twisted. And if that's your jam, check out Saltburn. It's a lot of things. This one's directed by Emerald Fennell, who wrote and directed a movie called Promising Young Woman. Or Women or Woman. I forget which the actual title is.
Woman,
but anyway,
I believe.
Yeah. Great film. She was also starred in Barbie. She played Midge in Barbie, and I didn't know that until today when I was looking her up. Yeah, she played Midge, the pregnant Barbie, in the Barbie movie. But anyway, she's an actress, an actor, and a filmmaker. So she's the real deal. Let me just describe Saltburn, non-spoilery. A student, played by Barry Keoghan, at Oxford University, finds himself drawn into the world of a charming and aristocratic classmate, played by Jacob Elordi, who invites him to his eccentric family's sprawling estate, called Saltburn, for a summer never to be forgotten. And boy, is it a summer. Things just really go kind of sideways. This one also stars Rosamund Pike in one of the most fun performances of the year in my book. She's just great to watch. She kind of gets all the great one-liners in the film. Yeah, I really like Saltburn. It was just grungy and filthy and funny, but also this is like a horror movie. You could kind of watch this movie and pretend that all these people are vampires, and it would be like that would be a movie. It almost felt like it was. And no, I'm not spoiling anything by saying that, but yeah, this is a great film. I was surprised by this one as well.
I was surprised too, Jim, and I think this is a really solid choice. Will, I'm sure you probably have comments on this too, so I'll be brief. But there was a lot of unexpected things happening in this movie. It was a fucking wild ride from the word go.
Mm-hmm.
And man, Barry Keoghan, like he is really developing a body of work for himself. That dude should be proud of. After seeing him in Banshees of Inisherin last year, who I think he was fantastic in, it was really good to see a lot of him in this movie, and I enjoyed that especially.
Yeah, Barry Keoghan should definitely be very proud of his body of work.
Yeah.
No, I think the fun thing about this movie is its tone. I think that it's when you really like, if you were to just kind of write down the plot beats on a piece of paper, kind of without the atmosphere, without the tone, and without the detail, there's other films that have done kind of what this film sets out to do. But what's so nice about this movie is the way that it does it, and the way that it just sort of drips atmosphere and drips like this, like you said, like this lusty, desperate horniness all the way through. Even for kind of non-sexual sequences too, it still has all of that there. I think it's a lot of fun. One of my favorites of the year. It's really neat to start thinking about, like, we're going to be doing our top 10 lists pretty soon. And I'm curious to see where the Iron Claw, where some of the other ones we're going to talk about fall, because there's some competition. But there's a really real scenario where this one ends up at least in one or more of our conversations. And that's a high mark.
Yeah,
most definitely. Well, great choice, Jim. You get passing marks for your assignment. Well done. Thank you so much.
Attack of the Sea students.
All right, Will, let's see if you did your holiday homework, friend. What is the movie that you are bringing to our holiday catch-up?
It's hard because my problem is that I ended up with like two or three that are kind of like of a similar tier in that they're all kind of worth talking about for different reasons. But the one that I think is most worth talking about, mainly because I think that it's going to be expanding out and we're going to see it more, is this film called American Fiction. I want to talk a little bit about American Fiction. So American Fiction is a dramatic satirical comedy. Like it's a couple of different things kind of meshed together. It stars Jeffrey Wright as this writer who he's written some pretty successful novels in the past, but they're incredibly highbrow, incredibly like art house, incredibly like, you have to be very specifically of like a Duke or Harvard, Yale educated philosophy type to really get it. So he has a very limited following, and he starts to become frustrated while writing his new book that the actor Issa Rae shows up, and she has written a book that she's a educated, and she's has this kind of poise, but she's written this novel that leans very much into what he considers to be sort of like stereotypes of the Black experience from his perspective, and he thinks it's degrading, and it's like it's beneath him and all Black people to have those types of depictions. And that's part of his literary tension that he has through all of this, because he, at a certain point, this is the kind of the hook of things, decides one night, and sort of like while having like a wine-fueled bender, decides to start writing a novel that is just about every stereotype that he can think of, kind of written in a first-person view. And a lot of like well-meaning, like white literary publishers read that and are like, this is important work, and they start to propel him up in popularity, even though he wrote it as sort of like a goof on what he was thinking as sort of lowbrow literature. That's happening at the same time as he's dealing with reconnecting with his family following a death in the family. So he's meeting up with his sister, played phenomenally by Tracy Ellis Ross, and his brother, Sterling K. Brown. And it's the family drama elements are kind of one part of the story. The world of literary writing and kind of how white critics versus Black writers kind of bounce off of one another is another one. I don't know that the two stories 100% mesh super well together. Like there is some times where you get kind of some whiplash between the two, but Jeffrey Wright is so good as an actor, and he plays this role in a way that I think is, you kind of understand where he's coming from, and you're not put off by him, even though he's very, very elevated in kind of his view of himself above a lot of people. Um, the comedy parts are funny, the dramatic parts, work. Again, it's not a perfect film, but I do think it has a lot to say, and I like that it's trying to say all of it in one film. So I would recommend American Fiction. Definitely a film worth watching. It's important.
Just Will, I did see the trailer. I think we saw the trailer. At least
Yep.
I did, babe. I don't know if you did.
I did.
Yeah, I can't remember what we saw, what trailer in front of which movie. But
Uh-huh.
I so want to. I'm mad. I'm angry about this movie because we're going to be doing our year-end things like next week, and I don't think there's a way I can see this film.
Jim,
Yeah,
there might be a way.
there might be a way. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, it is not
hope.
in.
Hold out hope is
It's
what I'm
not
saying.
yet in wide release. It's not on streaming, and it's not in our area's independent theater yet. So so it's I desperately want to see this one to evaluate it for end of the year, but I also want to see it because I think it's an interesting premise, right? It looks like he's an intellectual writer who writes in a very how do I say this, a very dumbed down. I don't know. I don't want to say that, but he writes in a very like
He's putting on
simplified.
airs. Yeah.
Yeah, but putting on airs in the other direction.
Right.
Kind of not speaking above, but speaking below his intellectual level, and all of a sudden he's like this major hit, right? It strikes a chord with the people. So there's a lot of, seems like there's a lot of social dynamics to explore there, and I'm really, plus I love Jeffrey Wright. He's pretty much great in everything he's in. So yeah, I'm fully in for this.
Yeah, Jeffrey Wright is freaking amazing, and I can't wait to see this movie. So if there is somehow an opportunity for that, I would totally jump on that.
Okay.
But yeah, Jim, you mentioned the year-end list of movies, and we're doing that tentatively. Our plan has been next week. So yeah, you almost feel like this craze to like see everything you can before then.
I know.
But you can only see what you can see and do what you can do. But we'll see what happens. But Will, I've been hearing a ton of people talking about this movie, and I haven't heard a single negative thing. Of course, I haven't been to Reddit about this movie yet because I haven't seen it yet. So I'm sure that will change. But this sounds like a really, really solid choice. So, Will, thank you so much for that. Appreciate it. Good stuff. You passed your assignment with flying colors as well, friend.
But did you?
Oh gosh,
Yeah,
I didn't watch any movies over the last week. None. Zero. Just kidding. There were several. And I had to pick one. I had to pick one. Let me just preface this by saying I'm so done with superhero movies, you guys. Marvel,
it's been a
DC,
year, hasn't it?
I don't fucking care. I feel so done. Which is why it's really interesting to me that the movie I'm bringing to this discussion this week is Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom. Somehow a superhero movie delighted me and caused me great enjoyment in my experience in the movie theater. I kind of liked the first one, but I think I actually liked this one better than the first one. I had more fun with it. And of course, the second Aquaman movie brings back Jason Momoa as the titular character. Owen Wilson is back. He's in the trailer, so I don't feel like this is any kind of spoiler. He and Jason Momoa team up to fight the bad guys, but one of them is a bad guy, kind of, question mark. At least he fucking was in the last movie. It's really interesting to see sort of the brother, half-brother dynamic on display here. Some of the family issues, bubbling up as they're trying to solve the calamity that is befalling the world. in the form of Black fucking Manta, who was in the first movie and is now back. He is super upgraded. He's got some kind of magical, dark, mystical trident that gives him great powers and sets him up as like a big villain in this film. And I gotta tell you, Yahya Abdul-Mateen II fucking stole that movie for me. His performance was amazing. Just a really, really phenomenal actor. And to see him, we saw him in the last movie for 15 minutes, but to see him in this one as sort of a fully realized, fleshed out, like villainous character with complicated motivations, you might even say he was deep.
A deep
Let's
villain.
see. Deep is the thing. I
Got
just
it.
did it. Anyway.
I see what you were tridenting there.
yeah. But I had a really good time with this movie. It took me to some interesting places. In the first like 30 minutes, I'm just like, ugh, we're in for a slog. Here we go. But by the end of the movie, like I was laughing, and I don't know. I ended up giving it like a 3.5 rating, which I guess is kind of middling. But when I look at some of the other superhero movies that I saw in 2023, fucking blows their 1 or 2 star ratings out of the water. So, I don't know what's going to happen with this version of Aquaman and the new James Gunn DCU versus the DCEU. But I'll say if this is the last of the DCEU, it went out on a pretty high note for me, which is saying a lot after the fucking Flash.
Right. You're Brad. I'm with you. I know we saw this together. I'm not. You guys know I'm not the biggest superhero movie guy, but I did have fun with this one. This one didn't bore me to death. This one didn't put me to sleep. It was light enough, popcorny enough, corny enough, and there was just the plot somewhat made sense. If you don't worry about like which animals can go how deep in the water and all that stuff. Like if you're not examining it at that level, I think this was a fun movie. Like I said, compared to what we got this year. Like, was the Flash this year? It was. So we at some point, right? We should do like a somebody needs to do a ranking of the superhero movies in 2023, right? We had the Flash, we had Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, we had Blue Beetle, we had the Marvels, we had I know I'm leaving some out.
That's
Guardians of the Galaxy 3.
Guardians of the Galaxy 3 did come out.
Yeah, I don't think this.
Yeah.
I don't think this film, Brad, and I apologize if maybe you think differently, but I don't think this film tops like the Guardians of the Galaxy.
Oh
3
no,
by
definitely
any stretch.
not.
But it was a solid superhero movie for the DCEU supposedly to go out on. I'm with you there.
All right, excellent. Well, Will, I know you haven't had a chance to catch up with this one yet. I know you're a comic fan, but I also know the DCEU is on its way out, and we haven't had super great feelings.
Yeah.
You may skip this one, maybe.
I'm going to skip this one. It'll show up on HBO Max, and I'll watch it then.
There you go.
Yeah.
I think what's his name does a really good job. Besides Jason Momoa, Patrick Wilson, I think.
Yeah,
is really good in this. And who plays the King guy? We're at the end. We're like, wait, that was him.
Dolph Lundgren. Yeah,
Dolph Lundgren. I'm like,
right.
We watched the whole movie with a character in it. I'm like, holy shit, that was Dolph Lundgren. But he's got like the beard, and he's got like the beard and everything. So it was a different looking Dolph Lundgren. I'm like, good for him. I'm glad
these Aquaman movies do a good job of like, holy shit, how did they get Dolph Lundgren in that role? And in the first one, holy shit, how did they get Willem Dafoe as the benevolent like mentor character? Like, not that they're hard gets, but more just like those wouldn't be your first people that you would think of to cast in those roles. So I do think that there's something to be said for inspired casting, and I do love Yahya Abdul-Mateen. He first caught my eye with Watchmen a few years ago, which was
is he the Manta guy?
Yes,
Black Manta.
Yeah. So I'm looking forward to seeing it. Just unfortunately it's really hard for a movie that to kind of break through this time of year when there's a lot of things that
Oh.
are coming out in theaters. If this had come out, like if this was like an October movie or like a summer movie, it would have been an easy slam dunk for me to go catch it. Just right now, it's hard to
Right.
squeeze in with everything else.
Right.
Yep. Completely get that. Totally. Well, we, according to our agenda, still have 2 minutes and 21 seconds. Y'all want to throw out some honorable mentions of the things you saw?
Will, do you have one? Because I'll look at my
Yeah,
my letterbox.
I will blur through a couple. Ferrari, way better than Ford versus Ferrari. It's the cars are not the main character; the cars are the background. And Adam Driver and Penelope Cruz have one of the best, like sort of like just staring match standoffs that I've seen in film in a while. The Color Purple. Hey guys, it's a musical, and the trailers don't advertise it as a musical the same way Wonka didn't advertise as a musical, and the
Hey,
same
Will,
way
look,
Mean Girls
I'm
isn't
gay.
advertised.
I can recognize a musical when I see one. Like I
I mean,
Unfortunately,
to be
most
fair,
audiences.
Oh,
To be
most
fair.
probably didn't. Yeah.
Fantasia was singing in like 2 of the 3 trailers that I saw. So,
But this
you knew
is
there
a
was some
like
music.
this is a film adaptation of the musical. Like so,
Broadway.
it is. Yeah, so it is a straight up like song and dance and choreographed numbers like musical.
Yeah.
And it's pretty decent. Every single one of the performers shows up. So yeah, those are 2 quick fire ones.
All right. Excellent. Babe, how about you?
Yeah, I have 2 movies that are tied on my list for maybe runners up in this category. They're still a little bit below Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom. Movie with Nick Cage called Dream Scenario, and a movie with Michael Fassbender called The Killer. The Killer is on Netflix right now, so you can watch that. Dream Scenario, I think I had to rent, but I'm not sure. Look, if you like tight procedural drama / thrillers, then The Killer might be for you. It's a pretty good view of this guy he's a paid high level assassin, and things go a little sideways for him during a job. And it's kind of a movie you've seen the premise like 100 times before, but in the way it's done, this is a David Fincher film, and it plays like a David Fincher film, although I don't think it's near his top level work. Fassbender's good. It's a good, solid, like procedural thriller, crime, murdering type film with action. And then Dream Scenario was a great premise. I'm not sure it followed through on that premise at the end, which kind of was a bummer because I think Nick Cage is really good in this. I really liked watching him in this film, but it's called Dream Scenario. It's about a guy who all of a sudden finds out that people all over the world are dreaming. He's appearing in people's dreams. He doesn't know why, not necessarily doing anything in these dreams. They don't know him, but he's appearing, so he becomes like a celebrity, and then he becomes kind of like an anti-celebrity. So it's an interesting premise. Like I said, I wish it had followed through a little bit better and stuck the landing. But it's a 3-star for me all day. Nick Cage elevated it by that much.
Rock on. There you go. Well, thank you, babe. For me, I don't have another movie to give an honorable mention to. I think we've talked about the ones that I saw and would mention, but we were staying in the cabin with some friends who had never seen the Last of Us TV show adaptation. Somehow they just missed the train when it came out. I really feel like that show is a movie in 9 parts on Max. And so we had an opportunity to introduce them to the show. We watched it from episode 1 all the way through the finish on episode 9 over the course of the week. And holy hell, I'm just reminded again how fantastic that series is. At the end of episode 3, the gay bear episode, just sniffles throughout the whole room in the dark. Like super, super powerful, and was a really neat experience to see it again and kind of vicariously experience it through them. So I actually know quite a few people who have never seen this series, and it's because they're like, oh, I don't really like zombie stuff. It's dumb. I don't want to watch it. One of the guys that we stayed with in the cabin had similar feelings, but gave the show a chance. And by the end, he was like, "This is one of the best shows I've ever seen on TV ever, and I hate zombies." So let that be your barometer. If you don't like zombies either and you've avoided the show, I think this is absolutely one that's worthwhile for you to check out. But the cool thing is, they're in bite-sized chunks of 45 minutes to an hour, and like a 3.5 hour long movie. You can pause it, take breaks in between, give yourself time to like let your soul heal in between each episode. Maybe really, really strong stuff there.
Yep, that was a good rewatch, definitely.
Yeah.
All right. Well, there you go, folks. Our holiday catch up is complete. We've had.
I'm sorry, it's our holiday catch up.
Spicy
holiday spicy catch up, whatever. In Michigan, we also say bag instead of bag. We're really weird. It's like give a bag for your groceries.
A bag for the
It's
groceries.
just bag for the groceries. It's just the way we say bag. Again, I think it's that A sounding like an E, so like catch up instead of catch up. You have to do the little whatever at the end.
Fucking Midwesterners, man.
I know.
I think we have ketchup too here in Texas because we drag our A's out. So I'm gonna catch up to you. Yeah.
Itch. Like y'all.
Yeah, there's that. We drag our vowels.
All right. We're gonna go ahead and like end this segment. We are coming back at you next week on January the 9th with our top 10 films of 2023. Unless we decide to punt it out to give ourselves an opportunity to see a couple more movies that we couldn't see yet. Again, we're going to try and see American Fiction. We'll see what happens if there's a way. But we did want to let y'all know, though, that we are going to be out of the virtual studio on Tuesday, January 16th. We've got some travel going on. We've got some other things happening, but we'll be back that following week. In case people want to chat with us, though, between now and our top 10 next week or beyond that while we're off, Jim, how can folks interface with you?
I mentioned my Letterboxd earlier in the show. I have reviewed every movie that I've seen in 2023. So they're out there. I will be putting a list together once I feel like I've seen the movies that I would like to see to evaluate, and B, that I can somehow see. So, but the deadline obviously will be next week when we come back with our top 10s of 2023 and honorable mentions. So I can't wait for that. And anyway, find me on my Letterboxd at JJP Out West, all one word, JJP Out West, and also find me on Facebook under my name, Jim Pugliafico, like it says right here on the screen for those of you watching.
All right, Jim. Thanks so much. Will, how about you, friend?
Check me out on the socials, Instagram, Blue Sky, Letterboxd, where I've been reviewing stuff as well. Look for TikTok. Look at the Movie Bear. That's the handle I use at all of those. And then Facebook, I'm William Lindis. That's probably the one that I'm using the most for just like general chatting and stuff. So just send me a message, say hi, let's chat.
All right. Excellent. And you can find me on Facebook. Just look for Brad Harris. I'm the one who likely has bear / chub / chaser / otter / twink / whatever friends in common with you. You can also find me on Letterboxd, which brings me to a note. William Lindis.
What?
I did it, friend. I logged every movie I saw last year on Letterboxd. That was your personal challenge to me, and I have achieved it. I don't know what I get when I see you in March, hopefully for South by Southwest. Maybe you can buy me, I don't know, a pack of gum or something. What fanfare! I love it. Woo! But check it out. Check it out. Because of you, William Lindis, I logged every movie, and I've got some stats. Are you ready?
Yes, let's hear them.
Dude,
And congratulations, by the way. Well done.
Thank you.
I'm proud of you. I'm proud of you, babe.
Thank you. I logged 95 movies in 2023.
That's right.
which I'm pretty sure is more movies than I've seen in the last few years. I didn't track the last few years, but it feels like more looking back through the list. And Letterboxd is telling me I spent 185 hours watching movies in 2023. I'm sure y'all's is like way, way more than that, but I feel like that's a lot for me. I've spent 130 hours playing Baldur's Gate 3, so I watched more movies than I played BG3.
But not by the biggest margin.
Well, by 50
Well, I mean, if
hours,
you count
I
the
guess.
time you actually spent like in the movie theater, like getting to the movie theater, slog all the 10 times you've seen the Argyle trailer, you know what I mean? All that stuff, like
Yeah,
probably
yeah.
it's probably 50% more hours than
Maybe.
That's
Maybe.
good.
Yeah. But I'm gonna keep it up, Will. I'm gonna do it in 2024 as well. It's so nice being able to just hit 2 clicks and have 80% of my list done. I've got to kill some darlings to make it into a top 10, but
Now,
I feel like it'll be a
have you
much
done your
easier
year
lift
in
this
review?
year.
Have you done your year in review yet?
I think, is that the thing I'm looking at right now? Brad Harris's year in film.
you kill darlings a lot.
Yes.
I'm just saying.
Yes, I love that. That's one of the other nice things is that year, because
Mm.
then you can see like, oh, I've watched. Looks like my most watched actor was Jason Momoa, or my most watched
neat.
director was so and so.
Oh,
A lot
wow.
of cool little things that you can see in there.
Apparently, my first film of the year was Megan, and my
Oh.
last film of the year was Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom. So those are some interesting bookends. I'm just saying.
Mm-hmm.
It's like mine was. I started with I Want to Dance with Somebody, the Whitney Houston film, which I forgot was this year. Wow. And then I watched Love Life on the 29th, the Koji Fukada film, which is really good.
Oh, I see.
You guys
Jim,
gotta show me these features.
I'm
Because
I'm actually putting the link to yours right now in our Facebook chat group that we use.
awesome. Awesome.
My 2 most watched actors this year, just so you know, were Harrison Ford and David Dastmalchian. Interesting.
David Dastmalchian? How did that work?
I have
You
6
saw that-
films apparently logged with him.
Wow.
Ant-Man, Late Night with the Devil.
Yes.
Oppenheimer, The Last Voyage of the Demeter, and then he was a voice actor in both parts of Batman: The Long Halloween, and I watched both of those on HBO.
Oh,
There's
So that
another
was-
movie out that I saw that you didn't even have on your list. It was a horror movie. Trying to remember the name of it, but with him starring in it.
Boogeyman. I didn't see Boogeyman.
yes,
this year.
yeah.
Jim, I have bad news for you.
What?
I tried to generate your link for you, but it says it's only available for pro and subscribing users.
Yeah.
Sorry, Charlie.
So they want
Maybe
money.
if you supported
Trying to short
Letterboxd
money.
like a decent person would.
not try to sponge off of a free. Service. You should see me get mad at Wikipedia these days. Oh my god.
I know, right? All right, folks. Well, listen, it has been great to start 2024 with you. Thanks so much for tuning in. Again, we'll be back with you next week for our top 10 films of 2023 to put the official closeout on the year. And we'll keep doing our thing from there. Happy New Year, everybody. We'll see y'all next time. Take care. Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.